The first wave of invader ships came without warning. No announcements, no demands, only the stark, crushing silence of space. The skies above Earth darkened as hundreds of sleek, menacing warships appeared from the depths of the cosmos, their hulls glinting ominously in the sunlight. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Ships that seemed to shimmer, their designs both organic and mechanical, as if alive with malevolent purpose. The world watched in horror as the first ships breached Earth's atmosphere, their weapons opening fire before their engines had even fully powered down. In mere moments, the alien warships unleashed a storm of destruction. A massive vessel hovered over New York City, its shadow swallowing entire blocks. The first blast rang out, and a shockwave slammed into the skyline. Buildings crumpled like paper, reduced to rubble in seconds. The skies above the city flickered with plasma discharges as alien energy cannons melted the very earth beneath them. Panic spread like wildfire. Around the globe, similar scenes unfolded. In London, the Tower of Big Ben fell with a thunderous crash as an alien ship landed in the middle of Trafalgar Square. In Tokyo, the Shibuya district was decimated by a series of concentrated laser beams that burned through everything in their path. The aliens were systematic, efficient. They struck without mercy, their goal clear: total subjugation. Governments scrambled to respond. Fighter jets launched from every major airfield, but they were little more than gnats against the towering invader ships. Rockets and missiles exploded in the air, but they only served to irritate the extraterrestrials, who effortlessly shot down each barrage with precise, unrelenting fire. The world's militaries, united for the first time in decades, fought valiantly, but it was as if they were attacking shadows. The aliens moved with such speed and coordination that Earth's best forces couldn't even land a significant blow. Humanity's first instinct was to fight back, to show that Earth was not a world to be conquered easily. But it became apparent, quickly and painfully, that Earth's technological edge had been rendered obsolete in the blink of an eye. Communications were severed across continents. Satellites crashed from the sky as they were struck by powerful pulses of electromagnetic energy, leaving the planet in darkness. The world's greatest cities, symbols of humanity's triumph over nature, were being reduced to ashes, all in the span of a few hours. Amidst the chaos, there were those who refused to give in. A small group of survivors, many of them soldiers, scientists, and engineers, found shelter deep in the underground bunkers of various nations. Their mission was no longer to fight back with the same weapons. Those had already proven useless. Instead, they sought out what might be humanity's only hope: innovation. They began to craft makeshift weapons, build defensive barriers, and search for any remnants of advanced technology that might help them turn the tide. But the clock was ticking, and every passing minute brought Earth closer to total annihilation. Among them was Commander Ethan Hayes, a battle-hardened officer who had served in multiple conflicts but had never encountered an enemy like this. As he surveyed the devastation from a secret military facility in Nevada, he felt a surge of helplessness. Humanity was not prepared for this kind of war, and yet, despite the odds, there was something in the back of his mind, a whisper of defiance. "They think they can crush us," he muttered to his team, gripping the edge of a table as the facility shook from the distant blasts. "But they don't know who they're up against. Not yet." And with that, the spark of resistance was lit. It was the first flicker of hope in a world that seemed lost, and it would grow brighter, stronger, until it could no longer be ignored. The invaders had made their mistake. They had underestimated Earth's greatest weapon: the will to survive. The world had already begun to buckle under the weight of the alien assault, but humanity's spirit was far from broken. In the aftermath of the initial bombardment, pockets of survivors, scattered, isolated, and deeply shaken, began to rally together. The world's militaries had been all but decimated, but humanity's greatest strength was never its weapons. It was the unyielding will to survive, to adapt, and to fight back against the impossible. Commander Ethan Hayes, now leading a ragtag group of military personnel, scientists, and civilians, stood in the depths of an underground bunker in Nevada. The facility had once been a nuclear fallout shelter designed to survive the worst of humanity's self-inflicted wars. Now, it was home to the beginning of something much more significant. Hayes scanned over the data collected from various survivors, civilians who had organized resistance cells in the ashes of their cities, guerrilla fighters who'd managed to down a few alien ships using nothing but makeshift explosive devices, and engineers who had scavenged alien wreckage for usable technology. Each report brought a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could fight back. But they were running out of time. "How much longer can we stay hidden?" asked Lena, one of Hayes' most trusted advisors. Her voice was tight with fear, but her eyes were steady, calculating. She worked tirelessly to analyze the wreckage of the alien ships they had managed to scavenge, hoping to find something, anything, that could give them an edge. "Not long," Hayes replied, his face grim. "They're systematically searching every city, every known military stronghold. It's only a matter of time before they find this place. We need to strike back. But how?" Lena pressed, frustration mounting in her voice. "Our weapons, even the ones we've stolen, aren't enough. They have us outgunned at every turn." The room fell silent, the weight of their situation sinking in. It seemed hopeless. Earth's greatest technological advancements had been reduced to ash, and yet in this very room, there was a spark, a kernel of something the invaders couldn't predict: human ingenuity. One of the engineers, a brilliant but eccentric inventor named Marcus, stood up from the workbench where he had been tinkering with salvaged alien components. He looked up, his face lit with a wild, almost manic energy. "I think I've got it," Marcus said, his voice shaking with excitement. "We've been looking at this all wrong. We can't fight them on their terms. But what if we don't need their kind of weapons at all?" Hayes raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Marcus walked over to a map of Earth they had spread across a table. His fingers traced the outlines of the alien fleet's movements, the way they spread across the globe like a plague, conquering one city after another. "Their technology is advanced, yes, but we're not dealing with the kind of minds that think like us. They underestimate us, Commander. We're not going to outgun them, but we can outthink them." Lena stepped forward, intrigued. "How?" Marcus grinned, a strange glint in his eyes. "Chaos. If we make it unpredictable, if we strike them where they least expect it, we can keep them off balance long enough to find a real weakness. The problem is they've already learned to anticipate our strategies. They've adapted. But what if we confuse them? Throw them into disarray? What if we make them think they're fighting ghosts?" For a moment, Hayes thought it over, his mind racing. The enemy was formidable, yes. But Marcus was right. Predictability was their greatest flaw. If they could disrupt the aliens' ability to think rationally, to anticipate the humans' next move, it might give them the opening they needed. "All right," Hayes said, his voice firm. "We'll start small. No large-scale attacks yet, just enough to make them question their superiority. We hit their supply lines, disrupt their communications. We make them paranoid. And in the meantime, we keep looking for an advantage, a real weapon." "Understood," Lena said, her voice steady. "And while we do that, we continue researching the alien technology. If there's a way to turn their own power against them, we'll find it." A flicker of hope spread through the bunker. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had a plan. An uncertain, risky plan, but a plan nonetheless. The aliens may have the advantage, but humanity wasn't about to roll over without a fight. They would adapt, they would learn, and they would survive. The first strike was coming. And this time, they would make sure the invaders felt it. The months after the initial invasion were nothing short of a nightmare, but amid the ashes of Earth's once great cities, there was a growing sense of resolve. Humanity's resistance had taken root, its roots spread deep into the remnants of a world in chaos. Every attack on the invaders, no matter how small, was a victory, a defiant stand against a force that seemed unconquerable. As human cells coordinated their efforts in the shadows, there were whispers, rumors, that the tide might be turning. Commander Hayes had never been one to believe in miracles, but what was happening now on Earth felt like one. Small victories, carefully executed sabotage, and guerrilla tactics had begun to disrupt the invaders' operations in key locations. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and most of all, relentless. But now, for the first time, the invaders were beginning to feel the weight of their miscalculation. Humanity's ability to adapt, survive, and fight in ways that no other species had ever done. It started with a daring raid on a major alien supply depot in the Brazilian rainforests, hidden deep in the jungle. The Resistance had learned that the invaders' logistical network was crucial to maintaining their operations. Without it, their advanced technologies would fall into disrepair, and their forces would be severely weakened. A mixed force of military veterans, engineers, and civilians, led by a Brazilian resistance commander named Rosa Silva, launched an attack under the cover of night. They struck hard and fast, planting explosives and disrupting the invaders' energy sources. By the time the alien reinforcements arrived, the depot was a smoldering ruin, and Rosa's team had vanished into the jungle. The raid was a success, but it was the aftermath that truly shook the invaders. The supply depot was critical to their continued operations, and with its destruction, a large portion of their fleet was left without fuel, energy reserves, and repair parts. It was a blow, and the aliens responded swiftly, sending strike teams to retaliate. But even as the invaders ramped up their efforts to hunt down the humans responsible, something else happened. In the days following the raid, the Resistance in Europe launched a coordinated attack on a group of alien research facilities. In Paris, a small team of scientists, led by Dr. Camille Duchamp, infiltrated a high-tech lab where the invaders were working on a new form of weaponry, an energy-based particle cannon capable of obliterating entire cities. The scientists managed to plant a virus in the aliens' central database, corrupting the weapon's design files and rendering their greatest asset useless. With their new weapon stalled, the invaders were left reeling, unsure of what to target next. It was the first time humanity had made the invaders truly hesitate. Word spread quickly across the planet. It wasn't much, but it was something. A sign that the humans were not helpless, that they had the power to inflict pain, to make the invaders bleed. Back in Nevada, Commander Hayes stood over a new set of reports with Lena and Marcus, his eyes scanning the fresh data. The alien fleet, once seemingly indestructible, was beginning to show signs of strain. The supply lines were becoming unstable, critical installations were under constant attack, and the invaders had begun to shift their strategy from global conquest to damage control. "Their arrogance is starting to slip," Hayes murmured, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "We've hurt them, and they're scrambling to adapt." Lena nodded, her fingers flying across a holographic screen as she pulled up intelligence from the global resistance cells. "They're getting more paranoid. We've become a threat in ways they didn't expect. Their communication networks are in disarray. They're even sending reconnaissance units into areas we know they'll never find anything." It was small, but it was undeniable. The resistance was shaking the very foundation of the invaders' campaign. The fear and frustration among the aliens were palpable, their commander's arrogance replaced by a gnawing uncertainty. They had entered Earth thinking it would be a simple conquest, a quick and efficient operation. Instead, they were being drawn into a war of attrition, where humanity's strength lay in its unpredictability and sheer will to survive. "We need to keep the pressure on," Hayes said, his voice hardening with resolve. "We can't give them time to regroup. We hit them where it hurts the most, on their terms. We'll keep disrupting their supplies, attack their research facilities, and keep them guessing." "We're far from winning," Marcus added, his tone grim, "but they're starting to realize we're not a species they can just crush." That night, as the stars glittered over the vastness of Earth, the resistance cells in various corners of the globe began to prepare for their next moves. They would not rest. Not now. Every small victory, every successful strike, every act of defiance had brought them one step closer to showing the invaders that Earth was not just another conquest. It was a world that would fight to the last breath. And the invaders, who had once seen humanity as weak, were now realizing they had awakened a force far more terrifying than they could ever have imagined. As the resistance continued to strike at the invaders' infrastructure, an eerie sense of momentum began to build. The aliens had underestimated humanity's capacity for resourcefulness and resilience, but in the shadows of Earth's shattered cities, something darker was stirring, something no one had expected. Commander Hayes knew the Resistance's attacks were causing ripples through the invader forces, but it wasn't enough. They needed to find a way to strike at the heart of their enemies, to hit them where it truly hurt. While the scattered groups of fighters focused on small-scale sabotage and guerrilla tactics, Hayes began to turn his attention to a different question. What could humanity do to actually defeat the invaders? The answer came when a small team of engineers and archaeologists unearthed a long-forgotten secret beneath the ruins of a city that had once been a thriving hub of technological innovation. London. Deep beneath the rubble, they discovered an ancient underground structure, buried long before the arrival of the aliens. The site was protected by layers of concrete and stone, as if it had been sealed off intentionally. The humans who uncovered it were hesitant at first, unsure of what they had found. When they breached the final layer of rock, they uncovered something that would change everything. The subterranean vault was unlike anything they had ever seen. Giant metallic structures, smooth and sleek, lined the walls. Alien symbols, unlike any known language, were etched into the surfaces. But it was the centerpiece of the vault that caught their attention. An enormous, pulsing energy source sat at the heart of the chamber, surrounded by strange devices and equipment. It seemed alive, radiating an eerie, almost sentient presence. Hayes, upon hearing the reports, made the difficult decision to investigate. He knew it was risky, but the potential of what lay beneath might be the key to turning the tide. A small team, including Lena, Marcus, and a few trusted soldiers, was dispatched to examine the site. They were prepared for the unknown, but nothing could have prepared them for what they would discover. Upon entering the chamber, Marcus felt a chill in the air, a strange and unsettling feeling that crept down his spine. He wasn't sure if it was the atmosphere or something more primal, but something about the energy source felt wrong. It was as if it were not just a power generator, but a repository of something darker, something older. Lena was the first to approach the device, her hands trembling as she ran her fingers over the smooth surface. The strange symbols seemed to glow faintly as she touched them, and for a brief moment, her eyes locked onto the symbols, as if she were understanding them. Her heart raced. Then, a low hum vibrated through the room, and a voice, a whisper, began to echo in her mind. "Release me," it said. She recoiled, but the voice was insistent, pressing against her thoughts. The others stared, trying to make sense of what was happening. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, suggested they pull away from the device, but Lena couldn't bring herself to move. The voice grew louder, more desperate. "You have awakened me. Now release me. I will give you the power to destroy them." A dark realization dawned on Hayes. The device wasn't just a power source. It was alive, and it was speaking to them. It had been waiting for centuries, perhaps millennia, trapped beneath Earth's surface, untouched by time, until now. The voice was a beckoning, seductive force, promising unimaginable power. But Hayes knew better. Whatever this entity was, it could not be trusted. The invaders, it seemed, were not the only threat humanity faced. What they had uncovered was something older, far older, and potentially more dangerous than the aliens themselves. "Shut it down," Hayes ordered, his voice firm, cutting through the growing dread. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." But as Marcus and Lena scrambled to disconnect the strange devices, a sudden flash of energy erupted from the center of the room. The walls trembled, and the air grew thick with an unnatural static charge. The ground cracked, and an unnatural coldness filled the chamber. It was clear now. Whatever lay beneath the earth had been waiting for the right moment to emerge. The entity, once dormant, was awakening. Lena pulled back, fear written across her face. We've unleashed something. It's not just a weapon. It's a force. The walls seemed to pulse with energy as the ground shook violently. The alien technology hummed and clicked, coming to life in ways that no one could have anticipated. In the distance, the sky darkened as a thunderous roar echoed through the chamber. Something ancient, something that had been sealed away for a reason. And as the group fled the underground vault, it became clear that they hadn't just uncovered a power source. They had unwittingly released an entity whose influence could destroy everything, alien and human alike. The resistance now faced a horrifying new reality. The invaders might not have been the greatest threat to Earth after all. Something much older, much more dangerous, had been waiting in the shadows, and it had just been set free. The question was no longer how to defeat the invaders, but whether humanity could survive the true horror that had been unleashed beneath their feet. The ground still trembled when Hayes and his team emerged from the underground vault, their hearts pounding from both fear and the rush of realization. The air felt wrong, static, as if charged with some unseen energy. The sky above had grown darker, and a heavy, unnatural fog had begun to creep across the landscape, swirling in tendrils like a living thing. Whatever they had unleashed beneath the ruins of London was not just a weapon, not merely a power source. It was something else entirely, something ancient, something that defied all their understanding. Lena stumbled out of the vault, eyes wide, her breath quick. This is beyond us. It's not just technology. It's alive. We've awoken something alien, but not like anything we've faced before. Hayes looked back at the darkened entrance to the vault, where an eerie pulse of light still flickered in the depths. He felt an odd pull, a deep, insistent urge that seemed to come from the very core of the earth, but he fought it down. They had made a grave mistake. Whatever that force was, it wasn't something they could control. The invaders were bad enough. Hayes muttered, his voice low. But this could be worse. They hurried to the surface, but as they climbed from the depths, the destruction was evident. The city was in chaos. The invader ships had intensified their attacks, but the strange fog had distorted their systems. Ships that had once been unstoppable now drifted aimlessly, their weapons malfunctioning. Their movements were erratic, disorganized, an indication that something had destabilized their control. Hayes realized then what was happening. The very force they had unwittingly unleashed was now disrupting the alien technology. The invaders' fleet had been built with a reliance on sophisticated, finely tuned systems that were no match for the ancient power that now seeped from the Earth's core. It's not just us it's affecting, Lena said, voice trembling. It's them, too. The battle for Earth had taken on an entirely new dimension. The invaders were no longer the only threat to humanity. A far older, far more malevolent presence had entered the picture, something that seemed to feed off the alien technology, resonating with it in a way that sent the invaders' ships into disarray. But that wasn't the worst part. As the fog rolled in, there were strange flashes of light, and from the depths of the earth, figures began to rise. Not human, not alien, something else. These creatures were massive, towering over the wreckage of the city, their forms dark and shifting. They seemed to be made of the same energy that had been emanating from the vault, their bodies a chaotic swirl of shadow and light. They were the true inheritors of the earth, ancient beings that had lain dormant beneath the surface, awaiting a time to awaken. They moved with purpose, their eyes glowing with an ominous energy. Hayes and his team stood frozen, watching in horror as one of the creatures rose higher, its form rippling with dark energy. It reached out toward the wreckage of an alien ship, and as it made contact, the ship crumpled like paper. The creature seemed to absorb the energy from the wreckage, growing even larger, more powerful. We've unleashed them, Marcus whispered in shock. The invaders were never the true threat. They were just vessels for this thing. A loud guttural noise erupted from the distance, and more of the creatures emerged from the ground, their forms towering over the buildings. They were the guardians of Earth's deepest secrets, and now they were awake, drawn to the alien presence they had sensed for eons. Lena shook her head in disbelief. What are they? Why didn't we know about this? Hayes clenched his fists, fury mixing with fear. This was the true power. The invaders were just a distraction. They'd been trying to control this force for millennia, and now they failed. We need to get out of here. Fast. But it was too late. As Hayes turned to lead the group toward safety, the ground rumbled again, and the creatures let out a deafening roar that echoed through the city. The invaders, too, were reacting, trying to regain control over their ships, but failing. The ancient force had disrupted them all. And now, with their technological advantage slipping away, the aliens were faced with something far worse than humanity's resistance. Earth had become a battleground not just for survival against an alien invasion, but for domination of a force far beyond their comprehension. Hayes now faced an even more daunting question. Could humanity survive not just the invaders, but the ancient horror that had been awakened beneath their feet? And worse yet, would the invaders, in their desperation, choose to align with the very entity they had tried to control? The lines between enemy and ally had blurred, and no one could predict where this new war would lead. The earth trembled once more, but this time, the shaking wasn't just from the alien ships. The ancient creatures, these towering, shadowy entities, moved with a chilling purpose, their forms rippling as they rose from the earth's depths. Their glowing eyes cast an unsettling light over the ruined cities, and their presence seemed to distort reality itself. These creatures weren't just awakened. They were angry, their hunger palpable in the air. Commander Hayes knew their time was running out. The resistance had been fighting the invaders, but now they had to contend with a far greater, more unknowable enemy. The invaders themselves were reeling, their fleets thrown into disarray by the destruction of their technological infrastructure. But what struck Hayes most wasn't their apparent weakness, it was their reaction. The invaders had always considered themselves the apex of the cosmos, impervious and invincible. Now, they were acting like cornered animals. "We need to move," Hayes said sharply, turning toward Lena and the rest of the team. "We can't stay here. We need to get to higher ground, rejoin the other cells." But Lena's eyes were fixed on the horizon, her expression unreadable. "Wait," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the noise of the chaos unfolding around them. In the distance, Hayes saw what she meant. The alien ships, disorganized and scattered, were beginning to converge, heading directly toward the creatures that had risen from the earth. The invaders, once confident in their superiority, were now looking for an alliance with the very force that had nearly obliterated them. They're trying to make contact," Marcus murmured, his eyes wide in disbelief. "They're offering themselves to them." It was true. A fleet of alien ships, battered and struggling, was now moving toward the towering entities. A crackling energy shot out from the ships, a sign that they were attempting to communicate. Hayes had never seen anything like it. The aliens had been relentless in their pursuit of domination, but now, faced with a force beyond their comprehension, they were desperate enough to submit. "They think they can control them," Lena said, a note of disgust creeping into her voice. "They think they can use them." Hayes' heart sank as he realized the terrible truth. The invaders were no longer trying to defeat Earth. They were trying to ally with the ancient beings. In their panic, they had made the worst kind of mistake. They were offering themselves to a force that might not be controlled at all. The ground quaked again, louder this time, as the ancient entities seemed to respond to the alien ships. A strange hum reverberated through the air, and the creatures extended massive tendrils of dark energy toward the ships, crackling and thrumming with power. The aliens didn't hesitate. They poured all their remaining energy into what could only be described as an offering, a desperate plea for mercy. Suddenly, the connection was made. The energy in the air thickened, swirling like a storm about to break. The alien ships stopped their erratic movements, and in the eerie silence that followed, something shifted. The creatures, ancient and terrifying, began to merge with the alien ship's technology, their dark tendrils intertwining with the metal and circuits of the invader fleet. "They've done it," Lena whispered, horror in her voice. "They've merged with them." It was worse than Hayes had imagined. The invaders, whose technological prowess had once been unmatched, had now fused with the very ancient power they had sought to control. And in doing so, they had become something far worse, a hybrid of alien intellect and primordial, unfathomable energy. The invaders were no longer just conquerors. They were now something entirely new, beings of unfathomable power, connected to the ancient force beneath Earth. They were neither fully alien nor fully ancient, but a terrifying combination of both. "They've become the Force," Marcus muttered in disbelief. "And now they can't be stopped." Hayes felt his stomach churn. The battlefield had shifted again. What they had once believed to be the enemy, alien invaders, had now transformed into a terrifying new breed of creatures that embody both technological might and incomprehensible ancient power. The Resistance had no idea how to fight this new abomination, no plan to counter such an overwhelming force. As Hayes processed the grim reality, Lena's voice cut through the fog of uncertainty. "We don't have the luxury of time. If we don't act now, the entire world will be under their control." The urgency was clear. The combined force of the alien invaders and the ancient beings was something no human could comprehend, and if they succeeded in merging completely, it would be impossible to reverse. Earth's fate hung in the balance, but humanity, battered and scarred, still had one thing going for them. Unlike the invaders, they had never underestimated the power of human ingenuity and the will to survive. But even as Hayes and his team turned to rally the global resistance, the creatures in the sky began to move again. This time, not toward Earth, but deeper into the cosmos. Their purpose, if it was ever clear, was now a terrifying mystery. The invaders had fused with them, but what would they do next? The war for Earth was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The world was on the edge of collapse. What had once been a battle for survival against alien invaders had now morphed into a fight against an abomination, a fusion of ancient, primal power and advanced alien technology that threatened to overwhelm everything. The invaders, no longer just conquerors, had merged with the ancient beings that had awakened beneath Earth. Now they were something far worse, a hybrid force that could manipulate both time and space, bending reality itself. As Hayes and his team regrouped with the remaining resistance cells, they knew time was running out. The invaders and their new, terrifying form were no longer just a threat to humanity. They were a threat to the entire planet. They had become a force of nature, unstoppable and unpredictable, leaving nothing but chaos in their wake. "We can't just keep hiding," Marcus said, his face grim. "We need a plan, a real one." Hayes stared at the holographic map that hovered in front of them, showing the scattered positions of the resistance cells across the globe. The ancient beings and the invader ships had begun to spread outward, their merged form causing natural disasters and disruptions wherever they went. Whole cities were being swallowed by violent storms and energy surges. The global communication network was in shambles, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain a unified front. Lena, her fingers trembling as she manipulated the holographic map, spoke up. "We need to attack the source. The fusion of alien technology and the ancient energy has to be happening somewhere, a central hub. If we destroy it, we can sever their connection to the power that's driving them." "That's easier said than done," Hayes replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "We don't even know where it is." "We do," Lena said, her voice steadier now. "I've been tracking the energy surges, the power readings. They're all converging on one location. It's in the Pacific, a deep underwater facility the invaders constructed. It's where they began their experiments with the ancient force. Hayes narrowed his eyes. An underwater facility. They'd been preparing for this from the beginning. Marcus crossed his arms, shaking his head. It's heavily guarded. We'd need a full assault force to even get close. We have no choice, Hayes said, his voice resolute. If we don't take out their source, they'll keep growing stronger. Every minute we waste is another minute they gain more control. The decision was made. The Resistance would launch a final, all-out assault on the underwater facility. It would be a suicide mission for most, but it was their only chance to stop the hybrid force from spreading further. As they gathered their forces, a wave of urgency washed over them. Fighters, engineers, and scientists, all volunteers, prepared for what might be their last mission. The Resistance's technology had improved, thanks to the salvaged alien equipment, but it was still nowhere near enough to counter the might of the invader hybrids. Their best hope was the element of surprise and the sheer determination to save their home. Hayes gathered his team one final time before they boarded their assault craft, looking at the faces of the men and women who had been with him from the beginning. Their faces were tired, but they were resolute. "We don't know what's waiting for us down there," Hayes said, voice steady but filled with resolve. "But we fight because Earth is ours. And no one, no thing, gets to take that from us." Lena nodded, her expression hardening. "We won't let them win. Not today." Marcus clapped his hand on Hayes' shoulder, offering a brief, reassuring smile. "Let's end this." The assault craft plunged into the deep, dark ocean, heading toward the heart of the invaders' underwater facility. As they descended, the water around them grew darker, colder, until it felt like they were entering the very depths of hell. In the distance, a faint glow appeared, signaling the facility's location. But just as they neared the target, a surge of energy erupted from below, creating a shockwave that sent their craft tumbling through the water. The ancient force was more alive than ever, and it was fighting back with everything it had. "We're not getting in easily," Lena shouted, gripping the control panel. "The facility's defenses are online. They know we're here." Hayes gritted his teeth. "Keep going. We can't stop now. We finish this, or we die trying." The final battle had begun. The invaders' hybrid force, empowered by the ancient entities, would stop at nothing to crush humanity. But the Resistance, battered and bruised, would fight with everything they had, not just for their own survival, but for the survival of their world. In the depths of the ocean, amid the rumbling darkness, Earth's last stand had begun. The water around the assault craft was an inky black, pierced only by the pulsing glow from the invader facility below. Every shake of the craft was a reminder that time was slipping away. The pressure was mounting, both the physical force of the ocean's depths and the weight of what they were about to face. Hayes gripped the armrests of his seat as the craft descended, the low hum of its engines vibrating in his chest. "They're preparing to fire," Lena said, her voice sharp with urgency as she worked the controls. "We need to disable the facility's shields, or we'll never make it inside." Hayes nodded, his eyes scanning the screen. Outside, the first flashes of alien energy blazed through the dark water, striking the craft with immense force. The impact reverberated through the hull, rattling the crew inside. "Brace yourselves," Hayes shouted as the craft rocked again. The power of the enemy was undeniable, but they could not stop now. They had one chance to succeed, and failure meant the complete eradication of everything they had fought for. Lena's fingers flew across the console, the glow of her monitors reflecting in her eyes. "Shields weakening," she muttered. "We need another hit. I can't hold it much longer." The glow from the invader facility grew brighter as they neared the heart of the structure. Through the porthole, Hayes saw the shadowy outline of the underwater fortress, massive, like the maw of some ancient beast. Energy coils spiraled around the structure, and hundreds of smaller craft swarmed like a cloud of locusts, surrounding the facility. "Hang on," Marcus shouted, his voice rising above the growing cacophony of the ship's groaning metal and the alien weapons pounding them from all sides. "I'll get us through." He slammed his fist on the control panel, and the craft lurched forward with a burst of speed, narrowly avoiding another energy blast that tore through the water behind them. But then, the craft went dark. The power flickered. Lena cursed, flipping switches and tapping at the controls, but the instruments were failing. The shields were down, and they were now at the mercy of the invaders. "Hold steady," Hayes said, his voice a calm anchor in the chaos. "We've come too far to let this stop us." In the next instant, a massive explosion rocked the craft as they broke through the last of the defensive energy field. They were inside. The walls of the facility loomed before them, an alien landscape that pulsed with that strange, otherworldly energy. The resistance had breached the heart of the enemy stronghold. "Everyone out now," Hayes barked. They scrambled to exit the craft, weapons drawn, hearts pounding in their chests. The facility's interior was like nothing they had ever seen. Smooth, reflective walls pulsing with strange light, the air thick with an unnatural hum. The hybrid invaders, alien in form, but wrapped in the energy of the ancient beings, were waiting for them. Towering figures clad in strange, shimmering armor. Without warning, one of the hybrids raised its hand, and a wave of energy shot toward them. The blast was immense, but Hayes and his team dove for cover, narrowly avoiding the full force of the attack. The Resistance's weapons had no effect on the hybrids, their energy shields deflecting every shot. "We can't fight them head-on," Marcus shouted, ducking behind a wall as another energy blast scorched the ground near him. Lena's eyes were wide as she surveyed the chamber. "The core. It's in the center of the facility. We can't fight them here. We need to reach the central chamber and destroy the source of the energy." Hayes nodded. "Then that's where we go. Stick together. We make it to the core, and we end this." The team moved quickly, darting through the facility's labyrinthine hallways, dodging blasts and alien creatures at every turn. Every step was a race against time, against the merging of two unstoppable forces, the invaders and the ancient power beneath Earth's surface. They had only one chance to stop it, and failure would mean the end of humanity. Finally, they'd reached the heart of the facility, the chamber that housed the central core. It was a massive, swirling vortex of energy, an unstable amalgamation of alien technology and primal force. The hybrids, now completely fused with the ancient entities, stood guard, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You'll never stop us," one of them spoke, its voice a mix of alien and guttural tones, resonating within their minds. "We are the culmination of the universe's greatest power. Earth belongs to us now." Hayes stepped forward, his weapon raised, though he knew it wouldn't make a difference. "Not if we have anything to say about it." Lena, moving quickly, connected a device to the core. It hummed to life, crackling with energy as she began the countdown. The hybrid surged forward, but it was too late. The device initiated the fail-safe. The core began to destabilize, and the entire facility began to shake, the energy vortex collapsing in on itself. The last thing Hayes saw before everything went white was the look of fury in the eyes of the hybrids. Then, the world exploded in light. And then, silence. When Hayes awoke, he was on the surface. The war was over. The facility lay in ruins beneath the ocean. The hybrid invaders were gone, their connection to the ancient power severed. Earth had been saved. But at what cost? The survivors gathered, battered and broken, yet resolute. The world was theirs to rebuild, but they would never forget the horrors they had faced and the price of their triumph.